Working as an FBI special agent was my dream job. My whistleblowing was apolitical and in the spirit of upholding my oath. Nonetheless, the FBI cynically elected to close ranks and attack the messenger.
The FBI will crush you. This government will crush you and your family if you try to expose the truth about things that they are doing that are wrong. We are all examples of that.
Joining us now are Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle. Thanks for joining us, fellas.
FBI whistleblowers Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle both join us now. Gentlemen, so glad to have you on the program. Thank you for your testimony.
We need more folks like you, and I'm sure more people are going to be, from your background, are going to be giving you guys more intel as you're sharing that with the rest of us. We can kind of see that this is becoming normal for them to be held accountable, because I think especially an institution that we pay their salaries, they need to be held accountable.
I think a lot of people do share our beliefs and convictions. I think they just aren't at the point that Steve and I and others have gotten to. They're too afraid.
Thank you so much for being a guest here on PBD Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
How big is that bloody flag that Steve's got? It's the stone wall of his house. Lots of love, guys. Thanks very much for joining us.
Steve Friend, Garrett O'Boyle. Thank you for being with us this morning. More importantly, thank you for speaking out. We appreciate it.
You're in the information age, but facts are in short supply. Reject the noise, ask bold questions, and pursue the truth with FBI whistleblowers and founding suspendables Garrett O'Boyle and Steve Friend. This is the American Radicals Podcast.
It is the American Radicals Podcast on a Thursday. It is the Thursday we have been waiting for a while now. Kash Patel's confirmation through the Senate Judiciary Committee is underway right now. They've been talking for the last 90 minutes, and Mazie Hirono just put her name tag down, and she's going to get into it. We're excited to bring that to you. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to subject you to that, because I think that these hearings are complete farce. Instead, today we're going to be talking about look what I found. We're going to drop in some information that's percolating and is actually emerging, that the American people, the scales have fallen away from their eyes. We're going to talk about the JFK files. Wouldn't you know, the FBI found like thousands of pages of those documents now that the Trump administration has taken the reins of power and is ordering them to actually be transparent. We have some emergency response failures from FEMA and then from the city of Los Angeles with those fires out there. We learned, or did we already know, that Hunter Biden essentially took over the White House, and that's a cautionary tale. There's going to be some increased likelihood of spying by our federal government because of what's going on over the pond, as they say. And then we want to get into actually a final piece about child and family services and the abuses and weaponizations that are going on there. Things that might have eluded your attention, because on its face, adopting kids looks like something that's objectively good, but there was an ugly underside of that, which we're going to talk about. So we're going to get to all of that. But before we begin, I think it's appropriate. I mean, I'm fairly confident that Kash Patel is going to emerge as the FBI director now. It seems like all of the winds are at our backs on this one. So in light of that, we got to give it a play.
Thank you very much.
With the next pick in my cabinet draft, I select Kash Patel to be the FBI director. Way to go, Kash.
See you soon, we will, FBI. And we're going to see Garrett O'Boyle right now. We don't have to wait anymore for @GOB Actual. He's now monetized. How you doing, my friend?
I'm pumped up now, Steve. After that, getting hyped over here.
Look, I have had to sit through this hearing because I hoped it was going to be relatively quick. I've come around to the conclusion that I want to get elected to the United States Senate so that I can plant a long-term con to become a chairman of a committee in which I will require all members to stand throughout the hearing. If you sit down, you're out. And maybe a 20 push-up minimum in order to speak. It would be done fairly quickly.
Could 91-year-old Chuck Grassley pass muster? I don't think he could stand. I know he couldn't do the push-ups, but I don't think he could stand that long, Steve.
Well, they say he is sharp as a tack, which means he's 1,000,000 years old and probably senile at this point, as was evidenced by the fact that he couldn't get through your quote or my quote or Marcus's quote or any of the quotes for that matter without garbling them.
These whistleblowers.
The gerontocracy strikes again. We're not going to hammer that too much today. I want to hammer some JFK stuff because that's one of the campaign promises from Donald Trump, some enhanced transparency. And it looks like in anticipation of that, they're trying to get ahead of it. The FBI looked under a rock and they found some extra documents that they've, I don't know, hidden away back in the giant crate where the Ark of the Covenant is from Indiana Jones. So, reporting from Axios, not a right-wing source. It's a scoop. The FBI found secret JFK assassination
Oh,
records.
really? Sure. You just happened to find them. Okay.
They just discovered them, 2,400 of them actually, tied to the assassination that were never provided to this board. It's a board that was established, gosh, like over 30 years ago. It's called the JFK Records Act and the JFK Assassination Records Review Board. Sounds like professional useless people. I mean, they are government documents. How hard is it to move on over? But people have been in the employ of the JFK Assassination Records Review Board now for 33 years. And they are supposed to look at them and then send them over to the National Archives. The still secret records are contained in 14,000 pages of documents. Trump was president in 2017. He actually wound up delaying disclosing them because of Mike Pompeo at the CIA told him that it would compromise sources and methods, I guess, or maybe the fact that the CIA was not uninvolved in that entire ordeal.
Mm-hmm.
President Biden also ordered a limited release of the records, but still did not fully comply with the spirit of the JFK Records Act, which, I mean, since this deals with the National Archives and there's a law on the books, does that mean that Joe Biden might have violated some document handling laws?
Oh, I'm certain he did. Just like anybody in government who's got a clearance, they've probably mishandled documents incorrectly at one point because this is what the bureaucracy, the gerontocracy, the combination of them does. They create rules just so they can use them against people when they want to get rid of them. That's how it works. But if you're Joe Biden and you got them documents hanging out in the trunk of your Corvette, well, then it's okay. You don't get raided by the FBI. But this JFK stuff has always been interesting to me. If I was going to wear my tinfoil hat, it it started with JFK when I was in like 6th grade. And it's been one I've been interested in ever since. And it's about time we start getting documents. But also, the way the government does this type of crap is why people don't trust the government. It's why people don't trust the legacy media because you want me to believe that the FBI just stumbled across some files in 2025? Give me a break. I don't buy it. I want to know what type of trickery is afoot here.
I know a lot of people got really into the JFK assassination. They've read through it and there's all these theories around it. It's one of those things that I just was never interested in,
The
but I will
Zapruder
concur.
film, Steve.
The all the roadblocks and the unwillingness to hand over this information has now radicalized me to say, like, I need to do a deep dive on it. I need to read everything. I need to watch every Oliver Stone interview that's ever been done. I have driven past the grassy knoll. It was
Really?
not remarkable. My uncle was driving, and as we did, he said, "That's the grassy knoll. It looks like it's got a slope that would probably keep Secret Service agents off of it. I mean, it's a slight slope, but
Well,
was not the Everest that I had built up in my mind."
you got to remember, Steve, the patriarchy was a lot stronger back then, where women weren't allowed to be Secret Service agents. So, uh,
Apparently, they're not allowed to be whistleblowers either. I couldn't help but notice this morning when Chuck Grassley read off all of the whistleblowers' quotes as part of his opening statements that they were all men, which I
hmm,
think goes back to the 30 by 30 initiative that I've been hammering about because they're not really hiring based on merit anymore. That makes people kind of compromised. That they know they're not qualified to hold a position, they're more likely to just follow orders. But yourself, Marcus, and others actually came forward with the right reasons at the right time, the right way for the right reason.
as did
Let's
you, Steve. You know what, though? Can we pull this thread a little bit more? Because you mentioned this to me this morning and to some other suspendable types in the background. But what do you attribute this to? Because I hadn't thought about that before, but you're right. It's all men.
Nikki
People in the
Parker
chat
doesn't
too.
count.
No, she's not a whistleblower. Come on. What did she quit her job? And then the first thing you ever heard about her was in Fox News. She was not a whistleblower. I'm sorry, she's just not. She quit her job because her husband makes a lot of money, and she thought she could get into Fox, and she did. So good for her. But that doesn't make you a whistleblower.
It's an interesting sociological study, I guess, or I don't know, psychological. I don't know. It's I normally am coming up with answers pretty quickly on this one. Other than there's a certain element of maybe let's go back to a biblical worldview on this one, Garrett. Um, Maybe around page 3, where they talk about men and women are different.
Hmm.
It took 1 verse to describe men and 6 to describe women. So that's a compliment to you, ladies. You're really
Yes.
complicated. But I think
And
it's pretty cut and dry. I mean, I've said it for a long time that doing the right thing is not always easy, but it's very simple. We're
mhm.
simple creatures.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of truth to that. That that's one of Jocko Willink's rules in his first book that he wrote, where he talks about it's not simple, or it's simple, not easy. Essentially, doing what the FBI claims to do, which is have integrity, is it's really simple, but apparently it's not very easy for most people to do. But it is a curious thread to pull for me, because I probably just because I hadn't really thought about it. And I know too, because I'm sure there's going to be some feminazi types coming out of the woodwork saying, "You misogynist." No, we're not. I got a family of all girls. Okay. My wife, she's a woman.
Isn't
She's
that the
female.
warrior's curse?
It sure is, which we got some flack on for that too. And it's like, how daft are you people? Do you really think we don't count it as a blessing? Do you really think that the Lord doesn't have that as part of the plan for a reason for a lot of the warrior types out there? It's all meticulating together for ultimate purposes that oftentimes we can't even begin to understand. But also, I know there are some female whistleblowers out there, or have been historically. But it is interesting that when mumbling old Chuck, who couldn't get through the statements, every single one a male, at least in recent memory. It's an interesting point.
Mhm. All right. I want to talk. We teased this on Tuesday, and I want to talk about the surveillance state and how it's propping up over across the pond in the UK and the possibilities that it creates for us.
Hello.
So I saw this come across my feed, and I thought it was worth sharing. This one comes from the Washington Post. Democracy dies in darkness. The UK ordered Apple to let it spy on users' encrypted accounts. And I'm not big on foreign affairs very much, but the UK is sort of a harbinger for what could possibly happen here. They
Hmm.
are our one of our oldest allies, I guess, but it's actually probably our oldest enemy. It always confuses me when we talk about that way. But this piece here from WAPO, let's work our way through it and then I think come to a conclusion that seems to me pretty inevitable in light of the security state that we've existed in for the last quarter of a century. But the British government has this undisclosed order requiring blanket capability to view fully encrypted material, not merely assistance in cracking a specific account. So it's not like through an American context, you can't send a search warrant or a subpoena to get into a specific phone because there's probable cause that it's connected to a crime. They just want blanket ability to get in at all times in real time to any account that they want, which is, I don't know, problematic if you're a civil liberties enthusiast like we are here.
Yes.
So, but it's them, not us, right? So rather than break the security promises it made to its users everywhere, Apple, which has kind of been holding the line on this one, especially since San Bernardino, where they really refused to just give the skeleton key to the FBI for those terrorists.
Mm-hmm.
But Apple is likely to just stop offering encrypted storage, the people said. But that would not fulfill the UK demand because their demand is not just for UK citizens. They want backdoor access to the services in other countries, including the United States. So the UK MI5 would be able to get access to your I account or mine. One of the people briefed on the situation, a consultant advising the US on encryption matters, said Apple would be barred from warning the users that its most advanced encryption is no longer providing full security. So they couldn't even tell you that the UK is looking at your account.
This
But
is this is where Apple needs to draw a firm line in the sand and say, no, we're not going to follow your law. and come at me, bro, because they got enough money. So go ahead, come bring it, UK. We'll fight you. And then secondly, if America is the America I thought it was, or at least was led to believe most of my life, I guess until recent history, but we would drop bombs on them for this.
Apple or the UK?
The UK, Revolutionary War Part D, because sorry, no, you don't get, they're basically creating a law to supplement their intelligence service so they can get wide swaths of encrypted information from across the globe. To me, that's fighting words. That is World War III kicking off because civil liberties are that that important. And I
Well, I mean, and for those who not even connecting the final dot, which I know you have, Garrett, do we actually have a partnership with the UK? Seems like they're in the Five Eyes. We share intelligence with each other. It would seem very easy for you, if you worked within the federal law enforcement apparatus, to tap one of your buddies in the UK to go do that, because like a task force, he doesn't have the constraints that you do. He could go do that, and then he could just share that information with you because he's a good partner. It would be sort of a workaround for constitutional protections, Fourth Amendment concerns. And look, they've made no secret, both the United Kingdom and here the FBI, that they do not like encrypted communication abilities. So the final paragraph here, and then I actually have a video for you, Garrett, just as a reminder from the Washington Post. UK and FBI in particular have said that encryption lets terrorists and child abusers hide more easily. Tech companies have pushed back, stressing a right to privacy in personal communication, arguing that backdoors for law enforcement are often exploited by criminals and can be abused by authoritarian regimes. That seems eminently reasonable from the tech companies. But as always, it's about the children and it's about national security, right? We have to have these abilities. Since the tool can be used for bad reasons, no one can have the tool. You can't have a lock on your door to keep your family and goods safe at night, because you could also put the lock on a cellar and put a person down there and unlawfully imprison them, right? So it's the lock's fault. I mean,
Yes.
things, we made the same argument with the gun, right? But here's one from the not too recent past where Republican and all out jerk off Paul Abate and Lindsey Graham had a conversation in front of the very Senate Judiciary Committee who is convening today to vote on Kash Patel. And they had a conversation that alluded, it was kind of a choreographed conversation. It's almost like they had rehearsed it ahead of time about the FBI's need for access.
Is there any way to solve that problem?
Sir, Senator, we've talked about this before. We need a solution that provides lawful access to law
So
enforcement.
you're telling me the guy that took 8 shots at the president, former president, has apps that we can't get into that may, if you could get into, reveal some relevant information?
That is correct, Senator.
So if he were talking to some foreign power, and I don't think any foreign power would hire this guy, by the way. So I'm not overly worried this was some great plot by the Iranians, because they couldn't even think of this. However, there could come a day where something like this is very important. How do we solve this problem?
Senator, as we've been saying, we need a solution that provides lawful access where when we go to
So
a
you're
company.
telling me, I agree with you, I'm not blaming you. We have encrypted apps of an assassin, a murderer, and we can't get into them all these days after. That needs to be fixed, folks. I'm all for privacy, but to a point.
Boom.
Yeah. No, Lindsay, no, it does not need to be fixed, because we are the alleged land of the free. And this is the way I look at this, as a not only a First Amendment issue, but a Fourth Amendment issue. The reason companies started, or even in some cases, just people, and then they turn it into a company, but they start developing strong encryption because of government. That's the main reason, is because of government. So no, Lindsay, we don't need a way through or a workaround or access. What we need you to do is be benevolent leaders instead of malevolent leaders. But that seems like a bridge too far, because even you on the right side of the aisle just want the keys to the kingdom. You want the ring. You want the ring of power. And that clip came from when the other side of the aisle had the ring of power, and he still is saying we need it. We need it. And I just
And back to this UK getting this ability and the connections that they would have with the United States government, it would be, hey, look what I found. It was just in the course of doing my investigation here, or in the course of doing my liaisoning with our foreign partners to combat terrorism for the children.
Of
We
course,
just
it's always for the children. What about the children? Let me pop this up here, because I've got a lot of things swirling around in my brain right now about what I want to say about how the FBI works and does things, but I'm not sure where the line is about some of it. So I'll just use what I can, like this from the FBI's website. International offices. Well, wait a second, Steve. I thought the FBI was a domestic law enforcement and intelligence agency. But no, it looks like they're global indeed, which maybe people know this. I'm sure we've touched on it before. But here's where I'm pointing right here. The role of the legal attaché agent. Typical duties of a legal attaché, which, for those who don't know, a legal attaché is someone who they're in a different country. That's where they live, oftentimes highly sought after positions, especially because you can land in places like London, hello, or Paris, or Berlin, or whatever. But
or St. Croix, where my boss who walked me out went.
I mean, that sounds pretty sweet. Just living on the beach. But what does it say they do? They coordinate requests for FBI or host country assistance overseas. They conduct investigations in coordination with the host government. Oh, they share investigative leads and information too. Well, look at that. They already have the groundwork established to obtain whatever MI5 is getting. So I don't see a lot of pushback coming from the bureau, or from America, or it's gonna be up to Apple to try to right this wrong. But also it goes globally to the broader problem with the erosion in civil liberties that we see. We see it here. We rant and rave about it all the time, just from an American perspective. But look at globally. It's a lot worse out there for most people than it is for us here. So I don't know. People really need to start standing up for their rights, their innate rights, which I think is what civil liberties are. They're not just something a government gives you. You innately have them just by being a person.
The guardrails need to be pushed out way further, because the nature of federal law enforcement or intelligence collection is to use their creative powers and abilities to circumvent the very guardrails. So the broader we can get, the better we can get. And just an acceptance that liberty and freedom, there is inherent risk to. And even if you succumb to a totalitarian despotic state, you still cannot have 100% guarantees of security. But this is all for the children. And let's talk about one child in particular. And that would be the son, now pardoned, of the former president, Hunter Biden, who's, I don't know, almost eligible for Social Security, yet we talk about him like he's a wayward kid in his 20s who's just off and trying to discover himself. Nice fake teeth, by the way, in that photo for those who are watching here on rumble.com/amradpod. Reminder, guys, make sure you smash the thumbs up. Eric Jason gave you the reminder, but I'll give it to you again. Follow the program. If you listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, subscribe so you can get our show at Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. For the story about Hunter Biden, this isn't really revelatory information as much as it's being represented as being a bombshell. I think it's probably worth talking about because of considering the source and the dangers that lie there, and just trusting a source because they're telling you what you want to hear. I mean, the look what I found isn't necessarily the information, it's the source of look what I found. So a former Democrat fundraiser alleges that Hunter Biden's unelected felonious son, well, he's not felonious anymore, he's been pardoned, he commandeered the country. So here are the quotes that this gal, her name is Lindy Lee. She was on with Sean Ryan. She said, you had a bunch of 20, 30-year-old staffers running the show. Gen Z and millennial staffers who were basically nerds reliving their high school days by living out their fantasies in the most powerful residence in the world. You had dozens of top donors, dozens of top supporters who were writing into the Oval Office saying, "What the F is happening?" After the debate, this is the debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, June of 2024, where he crapped the bed in front of 60 million people. After the debate, Hunter basically commandeered the White House, said Lee. He sat in on all White House top level meetings. Now, Lindy Lee is a former Democratic strategist fundraiser who served as a surrogate for Kamala Harris. So she's not a long-term convert here. But before I get to the sister part of this, Garrett, is the most favorite thing of the cable news watching conservative somebody who is a convert to their side, someone who, if you're going to stereotype, you would say, oh, that's completely a communist. And now they've seen the light. There's nobody they love better than that, right?
Right. They eat it up, which I kind of look at this as, think of World War II, and you're on the front lines in an American uniform, and a couple German guys come walking over with their hands up. You're not going to be like, "Welcome to the party. Here's the Thompson submachine gun." You're gonna take them in. And you're gonna be like, "All right, what's up with these dudes?"
Trust but verify. Maybe you got to sit out for a little while. I'm going to need to hear what your aha moment was, which I haven't heard from Lindy Lee.
No.
When did the scales fall away from your eyes? And as it pertains to this information, which is a bombshell, right? It's a bombshell to people who really have been maybe not involved in the
Yes.
news consumption business.
Right.
Because I got this from NBC News, which is from July of last year, over 6 months ago. Hunter Biden has joined White House meetings as he stays close to the president post-debate. It would seem that maybe she just read an NBC News article and then went on the Sean Ryan show saying that she's had a moment here. Maybe there could be a personal enrichment angle. That's all I'm going to proffer. But from this NBC report, one of the people familiar with the matter said Hunter Biden has been closely advising his father since the family gathered this past weekend at Camp David after Thursday's debate. This person said Hunter Biden has popped into a couple of meetings and phone calls the president has had with some of his advisors. So, not new information. I think that what we found here is it's not a movement, it's an industry.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. It's well said. It is an industry indeed. And she's reading the tea leaves. Okay, how can I keep myself relevant? How can I move on to that next paycheck because my girl Kamala didn't win? Oh, I
Oh,
know. I could
you don't think she'd be in the Kamala Harris White House
Oh, she would be
as
for
a
sure.
top fundraiser and surrogate? She
Yeah.
would have said, this campaign really opened my eyes. I think I'm going to go to the minority party right now.
Mm-hmm.
But she gave the people what they want,
Mm-hmm.
which is a quick soundbite, or in this case, it was actually a long form interview, but she held it together as long as she needed to, and spun the worm tongue in just the right way, and gave people who maybe hadn't been doing the research over the last 6 months what they thought was a bombshell, and now she'll
Mm-hmm.
be rewarded in some way or another. I imagine she'll be with Nikki Parker, and they
I
can tag
wonder
team some sort of panel.
definitely. Yeah. Tag teaming from the same side now too. But I wonder what's up with Sean Ryan having somebody like that on, because I know from some limited experience that he tries to do some legitimate vetting because he wants to be accurate. So I wonder what the deal is there, because from everything, it didn't take much for you to piece this together, Steve. I mean, it just, one, you've been paying attention. Two, you know of Hunter's corruption and that he already infiltrated the White House. So then you just take her at her word, what she said, compare it to the history, compare it to the other deceptive type of people that you see out in this interesting, unique space that we kind of exist in now. And you say, yeah, you know what, something's not adding up here. But then he's going to fly her out to Tennessee and have her on the show long form. I don't know. Strikes me as kind of bizarre.
Mhm. All right, I want to pivot over to FEMA and then just sort of emergency management and what we're learning about the failures. And on record, I think you and I kind of agree we don't want FEMA, but we're kind of outvoted in that regard. So we'll try to make it as make it as great as it can be, as long as we're going to be just dumping money into these bottomless pits. And it certainly hasn't been that way. So a couple of stories about FEMA. Now that the Department of Homeland Security is run by another woman with sparkly eyes who's good for TV, and that's Kristi Noem. So, Department of Homeland Security's Noem says that FEMA cases in North Carolina decreased by almost 80%. They've actually tried to adjudicate what the problems are down there for the people who are still being afflicted and suffering as a result of Hurricane Helene ravaging particularly Western North Carolina. Quote, President Trump came in, visited this community, and in less than 20 days secured over $54 million for families in need and registered 2,600 families that needed assistance and hadn't gotten that type of help to get signed up for the programs that we have, said Noem. In the past 5 days, we've decreased the number of open cases by almost 80%. An executive order a couple weeks ago, Trump established a review council to do a deep dive into FEMA's workings and its effectiveness. It's set up like this group, Garrett. It's called FEMARC. So it's Federal Emergency Management Agency Review Council. It's just a blue ribbon panel, and they're going to look into their current operations and investigate allocation of the $30 billion in annual disaster aid and see where it's going. And that's how we've been able to claw back, or at least alert the American people. Look what I found, and then eventually we're going to have to claw it back. This comes from the New York Times, and it's been covered a little bit, but it's worth digging into. Top FEMA official was fired because they sent $59 million to New York City to luxury hotels.
$59 million.
Garrett, you and me and everyone right now watching, we got close to 800 people watching. All of the taxes that we pay for our entire lives will not come anywhere close to $59 million.
Nope.
And it was just sent to a luxury hotel. Now, they clawed this one back, but how many times has this happened over the decades? Department of Government Efficiency, the Doge, Elon Musk on Monday sounded the alarm, $59 million payment to house the illegals. And that gets us to a last piece here on FEMA, as 4 employees fired. And Donald Trump is actually calling to end FEMA entirely. This is reporting from the Daily Signal.
I'm down.
FEMA spent tens of millions of dollars in Democrat areas, and also the hotel lobby, big donors to politicians, by the way, disobeying orders, but left the people of North Carolina high and dry. It's now under review and investigation. The Biden-run FEMA has been a disaster. FEMA should be terminated. It has been slow and totally ineffective. Individual states should handle storms, etc., as they come. Big savings, far more efficient. 3 exclamation points. So you know he's serious. He said that on Truth Social. That was the president of the United States. The 4 employees being fired included their chief financial officer, 2 program analysts, and a grant specialist. I think we should see more than that fired. Maybe some people prosecuted for misappropriating government resources. As long as the Doge is going to be digging into and following the money, how much you want to bet that fell into the coffers of some people who are in and around the government and not really particularly interested in the welfare of people in Western North Carolina?
Yeah, this is what I was thinking about while you were pulling these up. The first one, top official FEMA person fired for $59 million expenditure. You need to be charged, and probably a bunch of people under you too. And then, okay, you get 4 more. You get 4 more fired. So you got 5 that we know of that get fired. That is a start, but barely. I mean, you're just scratching the surface here, because how many people are involved with this? Even, let's say, on the hotel side of things, the people processing the transaction, coming up with the arrangement and the deal, and none of you, all of you just think, oh, I'm just doing my job. I work for this big hotel conglomerate, and this is just part of my job. None of you think along the way, this is wrong. This is a gross waste of funds. Taxpayers shouldn't be on the hook for this. No, nobody. Okay, sure.
Well, $59 million when you're looking at the overall scheme of things here. I mean, why are you going to quibble about that? That just represents 0.0008% of what we spend. So, I mean, it's just a pittance.
Right.
$59
It is.
million is more than you, me, and the entire audience will pay combined in taxes for our entire lives. Unless,
Hmm.
I don't know, maybe we've got the Oracle of Omaha, Warren Buffett, in the chat. If you are
It
out
might
there,
be
Warren,
more.
let's chat.
Yes, please. We need a Megwitch for you Charles Dickens fans. But I think you might be hard pressed to take everybody who's listening live right now, the 800 or so people, for all the money them and us are gonna make in our lifetime, might not even get to 59 million. It probably won't.
Well, I mean, when your lawsuit clears to the FBI, that'll be a completely different story. Make sure when you get it, that settlement, that it's tax free.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
That's
Uh,
the goal.
Emergency management, not FEMA, but still wasteful and horribly corrupt. Um, I guess we've all forgotten about Los Angeles, which again, I'm not crying about that. I mean, they voted for it, but there are people who lost everything in that city as well with the fires that were there a couple weeks ago that burned down almost everything. So I think it's worth talking about how they're being treated right now, particularly the people who are in really dire straits. They don't have a place to live. So the city has tried to accommodate them. This is coming from sarahcarter.com. Hollywood rears its ugly head again as it forces fire victims to find new shelter so filming can resume. The priorities here, right? If anything, look what I found. It's more the same. Your government hates you. But the American Red Cross was forced to search for a new shelter accommodations because they were using the Pasadena Convention Center. And the convention center asked to remove all the victims of the LA wildfires in order to return to its normal filming schedule this week. The convention center is sheltering about 300 people who lost their homes in fires. And according to LA Times, however, the convention center is, they're getting ready to film America's Got Talent. So, I mean, they have to find new accommodations for them.
Well,
Now, you've been left sort of homeless, Garrett, in the past. If you had
it's
temporary accommodations and they said to you, okay, indefinitely, we want to be charitable to you, Garrett, but look, we've got a nighttime television show to film. So why don't you just pack up your girl's stuff? It's not like you have very much to pack up. They don't even have their winter coats. Just hit the road.
it's nice to be able to laugh at this now. It's a cynical, bitter, yet comedic filled laugh. But I sorry, California. This is what you get. This is what you get. You voted for this. Those of you who moved away because you saw it was getting too bad, you took your crappy politics with you and you ruined places like Denver and Austin. So I don't know. I don't really have anything for you. I don't, on a human level, I feel bad because of a natural disaster that if the eco management of California was handled properly, maybe you could have avoided. But hey, you got to save the what was that fish? Not the kelp. What was
The
that fish
smelt,
called?
the
The
Delta
smelt.
smelt.
The smelt. You got to save the smelt. So I don't know. Like, too bad. I guess that's all you're really going to get from me. Is too bad. See
Well,
ya.
those
Forget
300
about
people, they are relying on charity from strangers. There's government programs as well. American Red Cross is not officially a government entity, but they do get a lot of government money. So it's sort of one of these quasi NGOs, right? But I don't hate the idea of giving shelter to people who lost everything in a fire.
right.
Now, there's also other charitable efforts underway in Los Angeles to manage the rebuild, and this is where it's so gross. The bureaucrats who are in charge of Los Angeles, they're saying, yeah. You people who don't have a home, and our hearts, our hearts go out to you. Our thoughts and prayers, our prayers to Gaia go out to you. But really, we're looking at this crisis as an opportunity because there is some prime real estate. We need to start working on this rebuild. Let's
Mm-hmm.
get after it. We need to build back better. Remember that
Yeah.
one?
Bring
So
BlackRock in.
they've enlisted the help of a couple of guys who are local to Los Angeles. They are pillars of the community. They have a track record of business success. Reporting from the Los Angeles Times, critics blast a move by the LA wildfire recovery czar. He said he'd do it for $500,000. He would take the lead here. It's $500,000 salary provided to him by charities for 3 months of work. And that was a little bit too much for the population of Los Angeles. He's now gone back on that. He had a second in command that was going to take it 50%. He was going to do it for $250,000 of 3 months of work. Again, a pay rate of $1 million a year.
Yeah. I'll
They have
do it for
now been
100K.
exposed. So digging into this one, faced with fierce criticism, you think, over her
Yeah.
chief wildfire recovery officer's planned salary of $500K for 90 days of work, LA Mayor Karen Bass, who was actually on the short list for VP for Joe Biden in 2020, by the way, reverse course said that this guy, his name is Steve Soboroff. I disavow you, Steve. How dare you besmirch the name of Steve? That he would receive no compensation. Soboroff's original salary would have been funded entirely by charitable organizations. Soboroff defended the arrangement initially, saying that his expertise made him worth the price. Now, if it's worth the price, I'm a free market guy. If I pay you $500,000 for 3 months and you return on investment of $12 billion or whatever, then maybe it was worth it. He said he put aside other real estate and environmental consulting work, forfeiting that potential income. So environmental consulting work in California is good work if you can get it. And he had to focus exclusively on the wildfires for 3 months. So he was foregoing that income that he would have earned in those 3 months. He earns a pretty penny normally for his regular work. So Soboroff defended the work, saying that this is what he had done already. He'd pushed for the mayor to hire an outside project manager. So he wanted the mayor, he delegated the responsibility of appointing someone to run the project that he was supposed to run to the mayor, to another person. And that person would then guide and get paid to guide the city agencies throughout to replace damaged and destroyed property and infrastructure, such as lights and sanitation systems. And since taking his post, he said he's also offered recommendations. I mean, are investment recommendations? No, on the city permitting process. So you guys need to have less red tape so people can build faster. That's what he's offered. He says he's worth it. $500,000. I mean, not getting it now, but he justified his role here and his compensation package.
Of course he did, because that's
Look what I found.
Yeah, that's what these elitists always do, isn't it, Steve? This guy, I'm sure, would spout any of the cultural Marxist talking points because that's what I got to do to make my living. And meanwhile, he's basically getting bribed. He's asking for a bribe. That's what this is. 3 months of work for $500,000, and then he doubles down on it. And then finally, because the heat is too much, then he starts to walk it back. You're just looking for a bribe, dude.
This city, which I have been a part of my entire life and I love, and my roots are here, I want to serve for a low price of $500,000
for 3 months of work. I mean, that's good money if you can get it. And thankfully, even in rotten Los Angeles, he wasn't able to. But
yeah, $500,000 in Los Angeles. I mean, that might fill a gas tank or 3. That's about it, though. But while we're finding more things, I want to get back to the USAID.
Oh boy.
I'll tell you what, man, you throw a rock into a pack of dogs, the one that yelps is the one you hit. And the reactions that we've gotten from communists in government for USAID, the Doge, they caught a bleeder on this one.
Yeah.
Okay. So some of the expenditures have been revealed, this coming from the Blaze. And I've just got a list of them here and the amounts. And again, we're back to how much taxes are you going to pay in your entire life? And these were just spent for, what did we get? $45 million to DEI scholarships in Burma.
$45 million, Steve, just right there. Just stop. Just stop. Because don't you think they could have sent us I don't know, our pay out of that money? Is that too much to ask for while we sit in eternal limbo? It's just a couple $100,000 between the two of us for the last 3 months.
You would have simped for the Biden USAID all day long on the American Radicals podcast, and they just passed over a cool 6 figures to you, sir. They also, in regard to the DEI programs. They canceled almost $400 million in extra contracts that were due to be spent, but just hadn't been spent.
Oh my goodness.
2 million, which is the pay rate for the Steve in Los Angeles annually, to actively strengthen trans-led organizations to deliver gender-affirming healthcare in Guatemala.
Okay. Okay. This is the other piece with USAID that everybody should be up in arms with. The countries that USAID, which let me preface this if it's not clear, I don't think USAID is a legitimate benefit to America. At the same time, I'm okay with America because we are so bountifully wealthy, helping other countries in need. But countries in need don't give a rip about your trans agenda.
This
Look at
is the
this.
image
Man.
from Statista, where the USAID is going. The lion's share of it was to Ukraine, 16 million, but yet Ethiopia, Jordan, Afghanistan, Somalia, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Syria, Nigeria,
Does that say
Yemen.
16,000 million?
Yes.
What does that mean?
It's in the billions.
Oh my gosh. And then, okay, and just with Ukraine up there, which we almost need to just remove the top piece of this and address some of these other shithole nations. But Ukraine is getting money from all over the place, from not just USAID, but from other. I can't, Steve. I can't, and my throat hurts.
Oh, don't worry. I'll do some talking here because I'm going to go back to the Blaze because I really, really want to cover some more of these expenditures. Again, as you sit there for 29 months, Garrett, $2.5 million to build electric vehicle charging stations in Vietnam, where they get monsoons, and you would think maybe electric vehicles might not do well. $31 million on counseling, organizational resilience, wellness, and work-life support. Man, that's a lot of government speak for USAID employees. So just on themselves for work-life balance about this horrible situation they have where they just send boatloads of money to Vietnam and South Africa and Ukraine. $38 million to study HIV among sex workers and their clients and transgenders in South Africa. $160 million to update the payment systems in Afghanistan. They needed direct deposit for the Taliban.
Oh man.
$330 million to fund alternative development projects that fail to deter farmers and drug traffickers and cultivating poppy plants, thereby inadvertently fueling heroin production. So they put $330 million in the wrong place, and it helped the Afghanis produce a whole bunch of heroin.
Oh man.
And then also the last one, as long as we're on the topic of large spending expenditures, and this you definitely need to have work-life balance if you awarded $1.2 billion to just undisclosed recipients. We don't know. Hey, look what I found. You spent a bunch of money to places. NFI. No further information.
No further information. Where'd it go? Why? It goes back to what you were saying about Doge getting, they really did get a bleeder here because you got so many politicians up in arms, which should, to those who have ears to hear, that should be enough to tell you that they know they've got some little secret. They got some little wormhole USAID money going somewhere, probably somehow getting kickbacks on it, coming back to them. So keep going, Doge. Keep uncovering this type of crap and finding out where it's actually going, what it's buying, what it's paying for, who it's paying off. This is why you're getting so much pushback from the Marxists in government, is because there's some type of trail. Maybe not a paper trail. In some cases, probably a paper trail, but there's a digital trail, and the type of people like Big Balls that Elon is hiring, they're going to find it, or at least whatever remnant of it is left. And I don't know, man, we got about 4 years left. I'd say let them loose. Let Big Balls loose. Let him teabag all these Marxists on the way in and on the way out.
205 more weeks left in the Trump second administration. So they have a longer runway, and they've gotten a lot done the first 3 weeks. And I have the last piece here, Garrett, and this is a little bit off of the topics we've been talking about today, but it is definitely in keeping with look what I found. And I think it's worth digging into. And I've got a couple of experiences here that I think are also worth, and that is it's called here at American Greatness, state-sponsored kidnapping industry. And it's a piece about child and family services and the canard that it often is. And because when you think about adoption services and foster care, our hearts all go to people trying to do the right thing for the right reasons, right? And unfortunately, as it's detailed here by Maureen Steele, it's not the case in a significant number of places. It's basically, I talked about this Lindy Lee. We're not a movement, we're an industry. This is an industry. So most people don't realize that removing children from their homes is not just an act of state intervention. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Under the Adoption and Safe Families Act of 1997, states receive federal Title IV-E funding for every child placed in foster care. The more children removed, the more money the state gets. States even, it's almost like a quota system, right? States even receive bonus payments for finalized adoptions. Now, getting the adoption process done efficiently, I think, is probably a good thing. But if part of getting the numbers up is removing children from loving homes so that you can juke the stats, that's entirely different. So now we've created this quota incentive structure that perversely incentivizes people to do the wrong thing. Now, back to the piece from the American Greatness. CPS, Child Protective Services, doesn't operate alone in the racket. The moment a child is taken, a network of court-mandated services kick into gear. It's almost like funding NGOs, Garrett. A network of court-mandated services kick into gear, forcing parents to pay exorbitant fees for programs they're required to complete before they can even hope to regain custody of their child. Judges, attorneys, social workers, therapists, foster care agencies all make money off of keeping children in the system. The longer a case drags on, the more everyone profits, except the families being destroyed in the process. By the end of 1987, there were an estimated 285,000 kids in foster care. Last year, 606,000, over double what it was in 1987. This trend does not indicate a rise in child abuse, but rather an increase in government overreach.
Oh, of course, government overreach. This one, I'm glad you brought this one today. It's quite fitting, Steve. And as you know, I believe in no coincidences out there. But friends of ours are in court right now as we speak. They're in court because they have fostered a child since she was pretty much a baby, and she's 4. I think she's 4 now, and they are finally getting. Well, I guess we don't know. We will see how court goes today, but they're supposed to be becoming the adoptive parents. But the government waste and interference and stupidity and just really what you touch on here from that piece, the lack of caring for the people that are most affected by it, the kids, the families, they just don't care. It's just another sign of rotten, broken, corrupted government. And all these caseworkers and judges and DAs and ADAs and different programs and people all on the government's dime, all the taxpayer paying for all their salaries, all just punt the court date another couple months. What's the big deal? Well, it is a big deal. These are people's lives. You only get one. You only get the one here on this earth. And of course, it's another government racket. Why wouldn't it be?
And we shouldn't have to, but we will issue the qualifier. If there are abusive parents, there is sort of a role there to remove the kids, and you'd want that to happen.
For sure.
But when you incentivize these sorts of structures, it inevitably leads people to work smarter and not harder. And they do it from a very cold, calculated fashion as a government bureaucrat who's uninterested in the welfare of the people, who is theoretically the people they're supposed to be serving, their customers, but that doesn't happen. We had unique experiences with this on Indian reservations because there's this draconian law that says that if you remove an Indian juvenile from an Indian family, you have to be prejudiced and try to give the kid to another Indian family to preserve the culture. We had friends who were not Native Americans who were caring for a child since he was a baby. And then they just came in and took the kid away because they weren't Indians. And they wound up putting the kid in the care of a grandparent who was elderly and infirmed and couldn't care for him because we had to be culturally sensitive. And probably the worst case that I ever worked, and it's probably the case that I'm the most proud of, was a child protective services worker who facilitated a removal of a child and that child placement in her care so she could do her own welfare checks of herself. Then she rang up a doctor and tried to get the kid adjudicated to be special needs, to be retarded in some way, so she could get more money. And she locked him in a basement dungeon on a concrete floor where the only friends he had were, as he said later, the rats who crawled over his legs at night.
Oof.
She's sitting in prison right now. We had to negotiate a plea for that one. She didn't get to be in prison forever, so I'm not really content with the total outcome. But nevertheless, you get what you can in that sort of industry. But I know it's a dark topic. It's off of the beaten trail that we're kind of covering down on today. But it is something that I found, and I think that it's worth illuminating for people because, like you covered today, you're dealing with a loving family that's their future is up in the air, and it's at the fingertips of a judge and attorneys who really they're going to go home tonight and not give it a second thought.
Right. They're just, well, I got one more day of the week left to go to work. Tomorrow's Friday, so whatever. And that's unfortunate. And we've seen it. We've talked about it recently regarding our time in the FBI. The buckets again come into play with the different types of workers that you get. And I think I saw it in private industry too before I guess I was a teenager, but you get it in all forms of work. But when the government's purpose is to make the country better and make it function properly or more akin to our ideals. Well, then when you have government waste and bloat like this and you just get awful people, or at least awful work ethics oftentimes, where they become very apathetic. And even though it is a bit of a dark topic, it's important. And I think it's important to hear stories like you just shared. That's what I thought the FBI was doing. That's what I wanted the FBI to be doing, is that type of work. And I know they do to some degree. But when they're too busy persecuting their political opponents because they've become more aligned with the Stasi or the Cheka or the KGB, then we have a real problem on our hands. I want the FBI to get back to that type of work primarily.
And Garrett, I do have the opportunity to say breaking news. Kash Patel has advanced through the Senate Judiciary Committee. He will be voted on by the full Senate. We're well on the road here to reforming it. So in light of that, and before our palate cleanse and before we get your perspective, I got to give it a play.
Thank you very much. With the next pick in my cabinet draft, I select Kash Patel to be the FBI director. Way to go, Kash.
I love
Mission first.
Where's
Congratulations, Kash Patel.
I got my pin over here. So there it is.
All right, Garrett.
Keep it right there.
We do have a fun palate cleanse for Midwesterners like yourself. But before we do, what are your thoughts on the day?
Yeah, this all really is coming together, Steve. I pulled this up maybe about 15 minutes ago, just with some of the stuff we'd been talking about, kind of led me into this direction. And it has only been confirmed. And now with this late breaking news with Kash, it makes even more sense. We're going to the not oft read book of Deuteronomy. And in Deuteronomy 16, starting in verse 18, it says, "You shall appoint judges and officers in all your towns that the Lord your God is giving you, according to your tribes, and they shall judge the people with righteous judgment. You shall not pervert justice. You shall not show partiality, and you shall not accept a bribe. For a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and subverts the cause of the righteous. Justice and only justice you shall follow, that you may live and inherit the land that the Lord your God is giving you. I pray that we are entering a new era of actual justice as described right there in Deuteronomy.
And we go 10:30 Eastern time. It normally takes about 60-minute show. So Garrett's an hour earlier in the Midwest. It's not coming up quite on his lunchtime, but today's palate cleanse, I'm curious to get his perspective on, is this really what it looks like when you go and grab chow at midday for yourself, my friend?
All right, time for lunch. What's on the menu? You'll see. What the This is gonna be good. Hey, what are you doing? You're gonna eat butter, Cool Whip, and cottage cheese for lunch? Dude, it's not butter. What do you mean it's not butter? It's leftover lasagna. What's in the Cool Whip then? It's a slice of pie for dessert. Why don't you just use Tupperware? Because these are perfectly good containers, and besides, my Tupperware's got a lot of spaghetti stains on it. Oh, I get it. You're too cheap to throw anything away, so you have to reuse every container possible. You're one of those hoarders. You say hoarder, but I say financially responsible. Let me guess, the cottage cheese is Cool Whip for my pie. Why didn't you just... Never mind, just tell me what's in the last one. It's killing me. You can't have lasagna without garlic bread. Wow, I can't believe it's not butter. That's what I was forgetting. Want some potato salad? My grandma's recipe. Yeah, go ahead, I ain't gonna eat it all. Lunch is over. It's that guy's problem.
This is accurate. This is how I grew up, Steve. My mom, it was always these containers. My grandma, these containers. Thankfully, in my own adulthood, we have actual plastic Tupperware type containers that are clear, that you can see through to see what's in it. But yes, this is accurate.
We endeavor as always to bring you the facts, the hard-hitting facts on the American Radicals podcast, guys. All right, that is going to do it for today. Back with you Saturday, 10:30. Until then, guys, congratulations, Cash Patel. Have a great day.
You've been listening to the voice of the Suspendables on the American Radicals podcast. Follow us on rumble.com/amradpod.